Greetings, friends. Welcome to Head Above Water, a podcast about filmmaking and mental health and happiness and wellness and self-care and all that fun stuff while we try to maintain a career here in the entertainment industry. On today's episode, we talk to Paulina Lagudi Ulrich, the writer-director of Mail Order Monster. Mail Order Monster is a feature film that was on Showtime and is also available online now on iTunes and Amazon and many other different places, and we'll have links to all the places that you can watch the film in our show notes today. I also don't want to spend too much time on it because I do want to jump into our conversation with Paulina. We do have a new Facebook page, a new Instagram, and a new Twitter for you guys to check out. On Facebook, we are Head Above Water Podcast. On Instagram, we are Head Above Water Podcast. And on Twitter, because they still run on DOS for some reason, it's only Head Above H2O Pod. So check us out on those platforms. You can also check out the official website at headabovewaterpodcast.com. Please leave a rating or a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think about the show. And I was actually thinking about, now that we're in episode 4, I've always wanted these conversations to be therapy sessions for not only our guests, but for myself as well. So I'd love to hear from you. I'm thinking about maybe changing the name from mental health, maybe to wellness or happiness or something like that, just so it doesn't sound so clinical. So get in touch. Let me know what you think of the name of the show and if we should tweak it or make any changes. As always, our music is provided by the wonderfully talented Jason David White. Please check out his SoundCloud at Jason David White. He has wonderful music there. He was the composer for my film, and he can compose music for your film as well. And without further ado, I just want to jump into our conversation with Paulina Lagudi Ulrich, and we talk about some wonderful topics today. We talk about the effects of social media. We talk about some real serious stuff, eating disorders, working with your significant other. I love talking to couples who work together in the industry. I love to talk to them about their work with each other. And we also talk about shooting on actual real live Super 16 millimeter film. So that's also a fun little filmmaking conversation that we have with Paulina as well. So without further ado, episode 4, enjoy our conversation with Paulina Lagudi Ulrich. Paulina Lagudi Ulrich.
Yes.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good.
You definitely have the name for motion pictures. Like that name just jumps out at you. Like I know you don't have the Ulrich on a lot of the credits yet because a lot of your stuff was before you got married. But like
Yes.
that is a name for Hollywood right there. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you. I was so concerned because my maiden name was so Italian and intense. So adding the Ulrich on,
I know you've got all the bases covered.
Feels good.
Awesome. Let me ask you. All right. So you guys just got married. You just got married to your husband, Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Cooper is he's your DP on all of your stuff.
Everything.
Okay. Where did you meet Cooper?
So funny enough, Cooper and I both went to Chapman University together.
Okay.
Did not know each other. Had many mutual friends. We met 2 months after college, actually on set of a movie that Cooper and his dad were producing.
Okay. How many years ago was this?
5 years ago.
Okay,
now,
so you guys know each other for a while. Great.
Yeah. And so I was assisting one of the actors on a fluke because his old roommate, Cooper's old roommate, was supposed to be the assistant to one of the actors. The night before, his roommate got booked something or just wasn't able to show up the next day, but knew I was in town in LA. I'd moved, right after college. And he's like, hey, if you're free tomorrow, would you mind covering for me on this set? To assist one of the name actors. I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's a blast.
Yeah, what a great time. Did that, meet Cooper, and then honestly, the rest is history. A couple of months after being on set, we started dating, and after that, we started creating work together and just been inseparable ever since.
That's awesome. So did he ask you, how did he ask you out? How was
he asked me, well, we always joke because Cooper first, in very Cooper fashion, asked me to be his assistant, which we always laugh at because really he's my assistant. Yeah. He would not agree with that. He wanted to keep it so clerical at first. I don't know why.
We should go get drinks and talk about how you're going to be my assistant.
I know. And then
it's a different day and age. I don't know if you can say stuff like that anymore.
I was like, I know, yes, cut to 2 years later, there's no way he would have said that. But after that, he was like, a bunch of the people after the set that day, like we all went and got drinks together and had food. And then he's like, we talked about sushi. I was like, I love sushi. He's like, we should get sushi sometime. I was like, okay.
Oh, so he's smooth. So he's a smooth
Yeah,
operator.
he's a smooth operator.
Awesome. Yeah, I was watching through some of so I went to your website just to, as part of like my research for all this. I know we've spoken before and, I've talked about Mail Order Monster and we'll talk about that in a second too. But I wanted to like go, just go back into, your canon of stuff. And, I was looking at your short films and just seeing his name all over the place. I was really interested because it's really an interest to me because my wife's a real estate agent. She does a lot of video work. I do video for her, when I'm not working on my own projects. And, she's not in the business. So I'm super attuned to and keyed into, I've had, married couples on the show already, talking about their experiences. So it's always been really interesting to me to hear how married people or, people who are together work together, and get along, on set and offset and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to me just to, hear those origin stories and stuff like that.
Especially with the, for us too, people are always so concerned because it's like, oh my gosh, the director and the DP, like, especially when we were just dating, we weren't married yet. They're always concerned, like, oh, how do they work together? Because Cooper, people who know us, we have very strong personalities.
Sure.
So they're like, oh my gosh, this will be like the Clash of the Titans if something happens, and there have been a couple times where we've like over the years we've had to find our groove and find our communication, but we're just both such passionate people with what we do. And
well, you're Italian, you said, right?
I'm very Italian and he's just obsessed with cinematography, and I wouldn't be the director I am if it weren't for Cooper. And we both especially we work so good together now because you grow together with your people, but when you're not just like working with the people that you've constantly worked with forever and building a shorthand over time and a workflow, when you're living with that person and so intimately connected with that person, it kind of expedites that process.
Sure.
So
have you guys fought on set before or like argued on set?
Privately. Yeah. Mail Order Monster, for sure we did that. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But that's much more my fault.
Well, let's talk.
Both.
All right. Well, let's talk about that then. So like tell me about like when you guys, now listen, when, you're directing a picture, you're always, your DP has something in mind, with married or not, there's always going to be that kind of stuff. But, so like when you guys are, have a little bit of friction on set, how do you guys, handle that without having it bleed into, the rest of production?
And like I said, we're completely much better at this now because we always learn from our mistakes, but it really comes down to whenever we fought on set, it's because we've had time against us and what we're trying to achieve, we just cannot do in that amount of time.
Right.
And we're both trying to figure out a solution and unwilling to compromise on certain aspects of our solutions, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So Cooper wanting to be like, I need to get this way, absolutely, no matter what. And me at the time producing and directing, so knowing where the money's coming from, knowing the amount of time, being like, we just absolutely can't. And fighting in that regard. Also, I had to learn that just because you're the director and producer doesn't mean you can just wag that around all the time to get what you want.
Right.
And that took a lot of like hard lessons. I wouldn't say a lot. It took a couple hard lessons of really looking back and being quite embarrassed in how I reacted with things. And granted, I think we're always a little bit more hard on ourselves when we look back than things actually were taken. But I will say, whenever we did fight, we did it very privately. We'll be like, you and me in over here.
Right.
And we tried to keep it as private as possible. We used to like tease each other a lot more on set, like be a lot more nitpicky about things, but in a teasy way. And then we've kind of stopped that because it just, I think, is something where we can do it with ourselves. But when you're also not just the heads of a film with, as each other, he's got a crew that he has to lead, and I never want to undermine him. You don't want to,
exactly.
And make, so it was one of those things where we had to learn a respect level in a very interesting way from the beginning of our relationship too. So that's where it also kind of got messy in the beginning because we moved so fast in our relationship. We were living together after only 6 months of dating.
Oh, wow.
So it was like everything, we just really just dove right into everything. We're working together, we're living together, and it's like, but at the same time we're learning who we both are. And so you really learn about those things when you make mistakes and when you're put in situations where you're not always acting your best. So what's great now is we've come so far and gotten past that, but in the beginning I think it was one of those situations where it's just like when you're put up against an obstacle, sometimes you're not always going to act your best if you haven't prepared ahead of time mentally on how you're going to react. So yeah,
That I find that so interesting. Was there any, because you said you had to learn basically, how to communicate with him publicly. Was there ever, was there a specific instance where you're like, oh shit, I went too far, or oh shit, he went too far? And like, is there anything that you feel comfortable talking about publicly?
Yeah, it's funny. I can't really. I say oh yes because there's been a few of those times.
It sounds like you have to pick and choose.
Yeah,
story to tell.
It just my people who know me again. It's like my personality is that like I can be very. I have like the show Veep.
Sure.
Okay, that's like my people. Way she speaks.
I mean, I've seen bits and parts of it. I can't say I'm like super familiar, but obviously I'm familiar with her work.
So Julie Louis-Dreyfus' character, like she just can cut people so quickly, so quickly. And it's almost like she doesn't even realize she's doing it. It's like a second nature thing where she will default to this kind of fairly aggressive, somewhat below the belt, way of speaking because she knows that's going to get the reaction that she needs the fastest. And for her, it's all about moving quickly. She's the vice president, right? And then, eventually think she becomes a president and whatnot. But for me and how I grew up, especially like with a single dad and, running his business all alone and always being around that, like that's what I grew up with, always having thick skin. You're Italian, just say, people, brush it off. Don't be made of paper,
Right.
So sometimes I can ask, like I would ask for things from Cooper in a way where I'm like, we don't have time. I don't care about your feelings. Like just do it kind of thing.
Oh,
and
boy.
those aren't really the best.
If he's anything like me, that's...
It's not good.
Yeah.
Granted, there was another time where it was more on him because we couldn't get this effing Ronin. For some reason, this Ronin that we got was like messed up and we couldn't get it balanced with the red. And we really needed to just get this shoot. We only had one day to shoot this thing in this one location. And I'm like, we need to get it. We need to move on. And I was like very aware of, at this point of how I can maybe not react the best, especially with Cooper because I take him for granted because we, we're dating at the time.
Right.
Sometimes you speak to people a little kinder than you do sometimes like your family and your loved ones and stuff. So that's also another thing. But he was at his worst at that point and then he apologized later. We always apologize. That's kind of the biggest thing is we always say
of course.
Sorry. And yeah, we've learned a lot from it, which I'm so thankful for because we always say that like we went through all this stuff that you probably should go through before you get married because it really tests who you are and tests your relationship and how as you go through all the crap. So that way, it's like all that, like going through therapy before you get married and everything too. So yeah.
Yeah, being on a film set can certainly be like, just like
heightened everything.
I mean, you're really going to see the other person at their very worst. Yeah. So if you can survive that, then like the rest of it's probably, marriage is not easy, but
totally.
At least a little bit easier than being on set.
Absolutely.
Luckily, like with me and my wife, because most of the work that I do with her it's not like I don't have a crew like a lot. Like if I have to shoot a house or a property or something, like I get to do it on my own. Like she's almost never there. A lot of what we deal with is, me and my wife are also very, very stubborn people. It sounds like you guys are very similar too. And, it's almost good hearing that from you. Cause like when you're on set, you can push the boundaries so much and then learn what your boundaries are in other areas. But my wife and I, because we don't have that extra dimension, she sticks to her guns. She knows her real estate and she sticks to her guns. And I'm like, but we need to shoot something like this way. And everybody uses a gimbal and everybody, uses wide angle lenses. And let's try to figure out something different. And she's like, no, I need it to be like this. And I need it to be like, I'm like, I love you very much, but we should probably, take a break because there's nobody, like I said, like there's no going into another room and having a private conversation away from the crew. It's just all no holds barred. So, so like I said, it's of deep interest to me how people do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it can be done as long as you always choose to take responsibility and learn from it and grow from it and know that it's always going to be about the we. Like Cooper and I trust each other with everything, no matter what. So that's why we're able to move past it and grow and get better. But
because you don't see that a lot. I really don't think you see that a lot. At least the growth, that you're talking about. You don't, people usually, I've met plenty of people in this town. I don't think it's limited to, the film industry or
No.
Hollywood, this town or anything like that. It's relationship and there's going to be conflict. But yeah, when you're thrown into the fire of a film set and all of that, like, it's all a learning experience. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are figuring out how to work together without, letting it, interrupt your private, your private life.
Me too. I'm glad we're figuring it out.
That's great. That's great. Well, let me ask you this then. So you had said that you were raised by a single dad. So
Yeah.
I want to kind of talk about your movie a little bit, Mail Order Monster, which I had seen a while ago when we first met. Actually, before we dive into that, so you have not been on Twitter as much as you guys were, at least that you were, when we first connected. Was this intentional?
Kind of yes, kind of no. I
mean, it's Twitter, so everybody needs a goddamn break.
I know. It's funny. I guess more recently, probably a little bit before we got married and then during the honeymoon and whatnot, you get so isolated in the best of ways, and it really kind of concentrates what truly matters. And I think it's very easy in this industry to feel lost and to feel confused because you feel like you need to be doing so many things because everyone's doing these things, and you see that very successful person there who's always on Twitter, and that person over there is always on Instagram, and that person over there who's making all this YouTube stuff but also writing a series, and it can get very overwhelming, and then you just lose yourself.
Right. Oh, well, that happens to me all the time.
Right. Yeah, you lose yourself, and you lose the fact that it's like, wait, why am I trying to chase something that I've never been really good at sustaining at consistently because it's not authentic to who I am. When this is a career that's based on one thing and one thing only, and that's just being the very best at telling stories.
Right.
So you can be the biggest, the best followers in the world on Twitter and have the biggest account, but unless you're really good at telling stories, your career is only really going to go so far. And it kind of has to come down to a somewhat philosophical, existential conversation with yourself of what do I want out of this career for me? What does it mean to get up every day and work at it? Do I enjoy it? What does that mean? For me, I love writing. I write for myself so much, What's funny is and I love working, truly working, going to a job and making money, gives me so much fulfillment in life. Anytime I've been not in that state, which we can get into, when I first started out and, I was making money producing and then just lost so much money with irresponsible, financial intelligence and just
we were all young
broke
ones.
at the beginning of the year, because of it. Then it was you lose your sense of self-confidence and what you want to do with your life. So with Twitter, I'm not really on it that much. I will go on it every now and then if there's a specific thing I'm looking for. But yeah, it hasn't affected me at all. Believe it or not, since I've kind of stayed more focused and concentrated on just my routine every day, I've actually received job offers for directing. And I'm wow. Who knew? If you just...
That's a 1-to-1 correlation right there. Quit Twitter, get work.
Yes, I don't want to say... I don't want to be the one to write an article with that headline.
Yeah, that's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah,
Quit Twitter,
I know.
Get work. Yeah,
I know.
If only it was that easy.
Well, we do know Twitter can end work for a lot of people. So.
Yeah, we're trying to launch careers here. We're not trying to end them just
we
yet.
do know it does. That is a direct correlation.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. That's, not to get too off topic, but it really just I think from that thing of the universe and also yourself and your own work that you're putting in kind of meeting together. That's kind of what's been happening a little bit more recently. So
was it one thing in particular that was I'm just on this thing too much? Or because you said you had a conversation with yourself where you got to the point where you realized you had to tone it back a little bit. Was there something specific that happened, or was it a more natural,
I think it was pretty cumulative. Yeah. I think it was one of those things where it was just you find yourself on the socials more and more and more comparing, and you feel you're not in your head in the right way enough.
Sure. So that's always been my problem with it too.
It's tough because you don't realize people are just create something. Well, to come up with something that's meaningful or to have that sense of
go make your movie.
Creative. Yeah, right. Well, what is that movie and is it going to be worth it? To have that sense of, creativity and imagination, it takes a lot of space in your head.
Right.
And we take that space for granted a lot of times. And I read a really great book recently my dad gave me called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And anyone knows anything about me, they know I'm obsessed with Ryan Holiday with ego is the enemy and obstacle is the way. And Stillness is the Key is his most recent book, and it's been pretty impactful for sure.
That's awesome. You will have to send me links on those So
I will. Absolutely.
I can put them in the thing and then I can read them myself because I'm just looking to just, it's one of the reasons why I want to do the show is just absorb as many different points of view, as possible, and how people, how fellow filmmakers are experiencing the world and how it informs their work and stuff like that. Because especially with Twitter, it's so funny, like you say, and I think we talked about this too when we had lunch, way back when, is like I go on there, I like to see what other people are doing. I use it for mainly sports. Well, originally mainly sports, but then, after my movie got picked up and I was kind of more in the mix, I wanted to see what other people were doing. But yeah, it does have this cumulative effect of, I think the kids call it FOMO, where, where you're just, everyone's putting out the stuff that they're not putting out. Hey, I woke up this morning and I didn't want to get out of bed, so I stayed in bed. I know some people that, that post stuff like that, but for the most part, it's, like, hey, I'm shooting this movie, and hey, I'm shooting this commercial, and hey, I'm at this film festival, and hey, just go make your movie. And it's just like, well, I feel like shit when I can't get out of bed. And now these people are, making me feel like, and it's so funny too, because like, that's definitely not anyone's intention,
It's also just entirely not true. Yeah, I mean, it's when especially I've been in situations, believe it or not, where I've seen what has been written by a certain person on, on social media or whatever, and then I see that person a few days later and I learn about the actual project and I'm like, I would have never posted it because it wouldn't have been worth the post. But that's their way of creating relevance, There's another great book, please link to it as well. I'll send you all these in an email.
Awesome.
Called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And it's taken from the quote by Steve Martin when he gave that really very famous speech where he talks about being so good that they can't ignore you. And for anyone who wants to be the best in their field, period, whatever field that is, it is a very impactful book. And he does not sugarcoat anything. And he pretty much gets down to the brass tacks of the only way you will see success is if you essentially give or have a rare and valuable talent or skill or whatever that you can provide to the marketplace. If you're not providing anything rare and valuable, which we're in an industry where that is entirely subjective all the time, right?
Of course.
However, we're also in an industry where we're taught to imitate.
Right. I was going to say, you say rare, but rare has such a specific meaning, I guess, in what we do.
And if you think about it, it's kind of interesting because everything's another one of those until the new thing comes around that everyone rejected. And then now kind of like Stranger Things, the whole story of they were rejected 47 times or something ridiculous until they were picked up, and then you've got the Brie Larsons of the world where it's like no one really knew much about Brie Larson a little bit. Like she was kind of did some kid stuff and then she did, Short-Term 12 and things like that. But it wasn't until Room that she really became relevant.
Right. And I knew of her on The League even a couple of years before that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and then everyone's like, oh, well, Brie Larson type. Well, Brie Larson type never existed before, so it's just that thing of...
It's rare until it's not rare anymore.
You just have to focus on really cutting out the noise and just finding your unique voice because that is what is rare and valuable. That's the whole point of the whole thing, is getting up every day. He uses a great example of, a great TV writer, I forget his last name, Alex something, and the amount of work that person put in. True work of writing every single day, the amount of scripts, it's grueling, but the reward that we're all working towards has to equate to that huge amount of work. It wouldn't be worth it if it didn't have that amount of work. And I think we often, why I kind of got away from social media and stuff is because the amount of work I was putting in was not equating to what I was wanting to get out because I was losing so much time and energy on social media that I could have been spending on things that are going to actually get me somewhere.
And sometimes it's even easier. It's for me especially, it's so easy, working out of home, having a home office and trying to write and edit and do stuff here. I mean, I would sometimes just rather, see what's going on online than, put forth my own effort in my own stuff. And like you said, I mean, you see people, hey, I'm shooting my movie. Yeah, you're shooting your movie today, but we don't see the 8 to 10 months or the year that you put into writing it and pre-pro and all of that. And you just get the sense of look at how easy it comes for everyone else. And then I never want to go back to my other screen where I have, where I have my stuff open because why am I bothering writing if it comes so easy to everybody else and it's so hard for me?
It's supposed to be the thing about writing that I had to learn was I always thought I wasn't that good at it because it hurt. like, it was very uncomfortable. Like, going on social media and going on Pinterest, like, was a pillow for my brain,
right.
you know? And then when I was reading this book, it was like, no, it should feel very uncomfortable. Like, there really isn't a point where it isn't uncomfortable until you become a master, right? Which takes years and years and years. But when you're constantly pushing your brain and like pushing to that, your focus, so you can focus longer and focus more, it's like going to the gym, right? You're creating
it's muscles. A muscle. It's a muscle that you have to work out.
Yeah, it hurts. So that was something where I was like, okay,
that's a great point.
Now that I know that that's normal,
yeah,
I'll just keep at it. I'm sorry if my dogs are barking.
The doggies have input. What are they?
I don't know why they like to do that so much. I will never figure it out.
That's all right. I locked my dog in the closet right now, so if he's barking, I can't hear him. No.
Oh, that's good. Our place, like, I've gone in the closet to record before, and Cooper's been like, "Oh, it was so funny hearing the dogs." I'm like, "Really?" Because I was.
Yeah, I want to. Like I said, now that I have all this nice equipment, like I want to, like, build out like a whole thing in my. I'll do the whole thing. So.
Yeah, nice. What's it called? Like, where it's soundproofed and all that.
Yeah, like
stuff.
the whole, like, I have, when I used to work in promos, like, we used to have like I'd do sessions with the VO guys, and I would direct the VO sessions, and they'd be like, it sounds like they're in like a professional studio, and I'm like, where are you right now? And they're like, I'm just like in my closet. I've had VO guys even like, I'm in the bathroom at Starbucks, so like, let's get this going. I was like,
that's so funny.
All right, well, hey, listen, if it's quiet, and you can give it to me, let's do it. No
yeah.
So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh,
I
no,
think
that's
they're
quite
good
all right.
now. They should be fine.
That's all right. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll edit it out. Maybe we'll leave it in. I don't know. We'll see.
It wouldn't be an interview with me if the dogs did not interrupt at some point.
So now, yes, it's an official interview.
Gosh. But so to get back, let's backtrack a little bit. So we were talking originally before Twitter about, what were we talking about? Mail order monster.
Yes.
And, growing up with a single dad as well.
Yeah. So and actually what you were saying too about, getting rid of Twitter and stuff so you can focus on, your work and things like that. I watched Mail Order, like I said, I watched it after we first met way back when, and then I just watched it again just last night just to refamiliarize myself with everything. So you might have another 4 cents coming on iTunes. So put that into the till for the next one.
That I will.
But I had not watched some of your short stuff, and like I said, I went to your website and I watched some of your short stuff. So you had mentioned that you have a single dad. So obviously your personal life has really informed your work with the movie. Can you talk a little bit about, because I also remember you had said that, so you didn't write the original script, you acquired the original script, and then explain
it.
Yeah, so like, did you write a fresh draft, or did you work with the original screenwriter? Like, how did all that come about?
Well, first I would say, after watching Mail Order Monster and then my shorts, you must be like very confused, because everyone's usually very confused after watching the shorts and then being like, wait, then you made a family movie? This makes no sense.
Surprisingly not. Surprisingly not, good. Because like, obviously, well, I know you a little bit. I mean, we're not, we're friends. Hey, we're friends.
Totally.
But, I don't know a lot about you. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show and learn more about, like I said, your origin story and your origin story with Cooper and all of that.
Yeah.
But whenever I watch stuff like this, when I'm consuming it, to enjoy it and stuff, and I also was like yelling at the screen too, because no one's here in the house with me today, and I'm just
so funny.
like the monster is alive, and oh my God, I don't want to give any spoilers or anything, but I was just like, I'm getting into it again. But when I watch all of it together, they're very, very different movies. But they're obviously, and this is what I was getting to, is your personal life, your life experiences inform your work so deeply, I feel, that it really, has me very, very, very interested in your process and how it affects you. Some of your shorts are very, very personal. And, Mail Order Monster being a little bit more of a family movie, you can see the personal stuff in there.
Yeah.
But obviously you kind of have to gloss it over with some stuff. But can you talk a little bit about, and you can start with Mail Order Monster if you want to go into the other stuff, like how your personal experiences informed your work on the script that you wrote from the idea that you acquired, how you adapted that to your life experiences, and how you deal it, because it's also a very personal thing when you're putting your life on screen, even if it's, through a fictional character.
Totally.
When you're working through your stuff, when you're writing, and when you're on set working and you're seeing other people reenacting things that came from your mind, that's got to be a pretty intense experience as well. So
yeah. So, Yeah, Mail Order Monster essentially acquired the title and like a few of the character names and whatnot, and a bit of the family storyline, like story structure. But I pretty much revamped it entirely to be a story that is very like loosely based on my life. Like my biological mother did not pass away, whereas in, you know, I'm not giving anything away in the movie since it happens in the very beginning. That's what happens in the film. But my dad raised me pretty much as a single dad almost my entire life. And then my stepmom came in when I was like a preteen, so 13 years old, just a tad bit older than Sam is in the movie. She's 12. And I wanted to tell a movie or a story that was what I related to, which I didn't have, you know, a step monster. I didn't have a stepmom.
You didn't have a robot?
No, I didn't have like the evil stepmom or anything, which I know plenty of people have had those experiences for sure. And I've spoken to them before, but I didn't have that. But at the same time, we weren't the Brady Bunch. Right. It wasn't just, oh, yay, now I have a stepmom and all is happy. Like there was a ton of pain there. There was a lot of good and bad from every single person involved. My dad, myself, my brother, my stepmom. And I really just wanted to tell a story that created a conversation where the kid was heard. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of very gray stories or movies made about blended families that are told more from the adult's point of view. Yeah. Or they're the stories that are more black and white where it's like the evil stepmom that's about the kid. And there was nothing that really kind of fit that gap of, wait, what about the kid's point of view when they're not always totally correct, but they're not totally wrong either. And they're just misunderstood. They're just not ready yet.
And that's what I was wanted to say to her. I'm like, listen, your dad's making some good points here, man.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like, and I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, but like, so much of that dialogue.
Your dad's got some good points too.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because it's like, that's the kind of the point of the film. It's like, there's really not a bad person in it. There's no real evil character. And whether that was a detriment to the movie or not, you know, I just wanted to paint the story of what was real, which is, hey, some of the people we love the most in our lives, which for me at the time were my parents, were like the worst people in the world to me at certain moments.
Sure, when
because
you're 12 and 13.
Because just what you're going through and your perspective and you're feeling protective over, you know, your mom that you do have and things like that. So even though that person's never around. So it's just kind of this interesting thing where I wanted to tell a story that was deeply personal, but told in a way that could be, that we all very much know, that's not personal. Mm-hmm. It's very familiar. It's almost so familiar, it feels cliche, but it was a truly personal story. And what's great is it's really resonated with a lot of people that have been in similar shoes as myself. And to some people, they're like, oh, it's just a fun family movie, or seen that a million times. And it was kind of nice to put something out there like that. Granted, it's the third film I put out there that's pretty personal to me, but the one that had the most stakes involved. And to be able to put it out there and get reactions that go all across the board, it kind of was, it's very freeing, you know? You just surrender to it. You kind of can't really do it for I don't even know how to really describe it, but it kind of allowed me to be more transparent.
Yeah, it's an interesting feeling. You know, my movie is very autobiographical. It's about me and my father and his drug addiction and all that. I remember
watching it.
It's so, you know, weird isn't even the word, but like when you put your life on the screen, whether it be through a documentary like me or, you know, a narrative where you can put the things that you want to say and talk about like behind, you know, fictional characters, there's still, you know, the themes and stuff are still there.
Totally.
You know, and to be able to, again, as someone who's not really written a script before, never really written like a feature script, you know, to be able to hide stuff behind, and I'm not, you know, not saying that you're hiding anything or anything like that by any means.
No, yeah.
But just, you know, to be able to work out your shit through, you know, characters that you're creating. It's an interesting feeling to, I'll put it this way, like I've had multiple people be like, wow, you're so brave for putting that up there. And I was just like, I didn't really like think about it that way. Like,
yeah,
you know, like,
you've also been through the whole process too. Cause I think by the time someone sees it, by the time it's released, you've gone through all that whole process.
Yeah. There's a whole disconnect, you know, like I had spent, you know, I wasn't the editor on it, but you know, I did all the finishing. I was the online editor. I delivered all the materials to the distributor and all the film festivals and stuff. And like people like, you're so brave. Like, how could you do that? And I just tell people like, well, for the last 2 years, Like, well, first of all, I've watched all of it like 8 million times. So like there's already a disconnect there. But like I spent the last, 2 years making sure it was all technically correct. That like after a while, like I wasn't even listening to the content anymore. I just wanted to make sure the levels were all being hit.
I totally get that.
So it's not even like a bravery thing like it is in the beginning, but at some point like the profession takes over. And at some point it's like the content doesn't belong to you anymore. Like you get to a certain point where like, whether it be shooting or when you're in post and editorial, like at some point, like I'm just putting together a picture here. Like I don't even see it as my life. Maybe that was just what I did to protect myself from it. I mean, it took me almost 15 years just to watch my original father's videotapes. Yeah. So like after a while, like, I could just put up that wall and just be like, well, I'm putting this thing together now. Like the content, like onlining a movie that's about my family is the same process that I do when I online a movie for someone else. So like I'm just doing my job at that point and not really thinking about like, wow, I'm being really brave here by like telling, the world something.
I think it depends on also too on what story you're telling. Like I don't think how we react to different stories we tell about our lives or ourselves, or whether it's, not necessarily something that we've written that's autobiographical or not, or a documentary, like we're going to react to it all differently. And I think that's what kind of keeps it fresh.
Right.
Or what makes this profession so cool is the fact that it is a new experience regardless of the project. Like this is how it was one of the most vulnerable positions I'd put myself in as like a filmmaker, because it was my first thing and it's like, very intense storytelling. And that was more like, scary of like, I made something, let's see like what happens. Where the one that was probably for me personally the most vulnerable to put out there was Holly's Girl, because of when we'd have to talk about it at screenings. And like,
I wanted to ask you about that, but I was afraid.
No. I mean, this is the great thing about filmmaking. No, I think that kind of you don't get to have that privilege anymore when you're a filmmaker, in my opinion. Is like that's kind of what you do. That's kind of my whole thing. Is like what I love about making stuff that's personal is I'll be the one to like be naked about it, if that makes sense. Like I can talk about it because why not? Like I've already put it on screen. I put it like Joe Schmo can watch it. That's my story. There you go. Like I have no, like I'm an open book, if that makes sense. There's nothing that I'm attached to that I'm ashamed of.
Yeah. Like if we were ashamed of it, we wouldn't be making pictures about it.
No. Like, and then I probably would make a movie about it just to figure out why I'm ashamed about it. and then not be ashamed about it anymore.
It's so meta at that point. It's just folding it upon itself.
I think shame is something that we're all very scared of, but also fully interested in, and is entangled in so many things. But yeah, so that for me, it's just kind of like I like telling deeply personal stories, but funny enough, because of Mail Order Monster, was able to get opportunities where I'm telling other people's story. And then the challenge of creating your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own life's experiences that are personal, and how do you infuse that sense of groundedness into a story that's not your own? And that's also its own challenge that I don't think I would have been able to do if I hadn't gone so deeply within myself and put it out there. So it's kind of just, you have to do it.
That's super interesting. So when you made Holly's, what was it again?
Holly's Girl,
right? So it's on Vimeo. I think I was watching it on Vimeo.
Yep.
So it's about eating disorders.
Yes.
And so when you made that, tell me a little bit about the process then of working through that kind of stuff. Like, did you still all right, let me ask you this, because I don't want to be too personal, but I also...
You're totally fine.
All right, great. Did you still have an eating disorder while you were making the picture?
Kind of, not really. Like, I like to think that at the time, I would say I was at a very difficult part of the recovery process.
Okay.
Right? So for me, I had an eating disorder for about 7 years. It to kind of rear its head every now and then during stressful times in my life. But I had it pretty bad for 7 years and caused so many issues within my family and all these things. I got better and then I kind of relapsed. And then by the time Holly's Girl came around, I was at a point where I had just actually a lot of health problems, we had to go to doctors and stuff because I had so many health problems.
And what year was
as ramifications? 2016.
Okay, so just a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Wow.
Man, it feels like a lifetime ago.
I bet.
I know, right? And so I was in the process of really healing. So like having to eat differently, having to exercise differently. I looked different to myself. You know, I'd put on a lot more weight than I ever had before. And so I felt very, very vulnerable. But at the same time, I was the most committed I'd ever been to getting better. Like I knew I was never going back, if
That's
that
great.
makes sense.
Absolutely.
So then, yeah, and then I made Holly's Girl, believe it or not, because someone else had brought me the script.
So it wasn't even something that you had originally.
They'd given me a 12-page script when a good friend of mine who also dealt with disordered eating, and she was like, I want to make this movie, and it's kind of got this whole thing, and she gave me a 12-page script, and I read it, and I ripped off the first like 9 pages, and I took the last 2 or 3, and I was like, okay, so here's the movie. Right? Because This Is How is only a page and a half of a script, even though it's 11 and a half minutes or something like that.
Right.
So I ended up rewriting it with her and with Molly, and then I directed it fully on that one, and it was very personal for sure, but it was cool because one, I really like working with other writers. It's difficult for me to just write on my own, but also too, it was great because it's something that everyone can kind of relate. We wanted to tell a story about not necessarily just eating disorders, but just an abusive relationship, because that's really what it is. It's an abusive relationship within yourself. And so it kind of goes back to that thing of when you try and make something very deeply personal, I try to find like the universal clothing I can put it in that makes it approachable. Sometimes it's difficult to make a story about like addiction or eating disorders or something where it's like, oh, I don't have that, so I'm going to look at that thing as like, oh, that's so sad for that person.
Right.
Or the other, instead of thinking about like, well, how do I have an abusive relationship within myself?
So did you think that, so when you were in production on it, did you feel, and maybe this kind of changed depending on your mood of the day, did you feel that like making it was good? Like, so you'd be on set and you would see what was going on, and were you just like, this feels really good that I'm seeing this, that I'm using this as an opportunity to get past it? Or were you more, or were there, times when you were like, wow, I'm directing this thing, but I can't watch it because it's too much. It's too close. It's too personal. I just want to go and do that thing that like I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm going to go have something to eat.
Yeah.
Or something like it's good and bad. Like, was there like a yin and yang to it? Like how did you deal with that in the moment? How personal it is.
I feel like when I'm directing on set too, I'm kind of like removed from that point because I've done so much of the prep work and I'm just so focused on like creating
You're just doing
the piece that like, I'm like, let's go all the way, know?
Right.
But what I did find was really cool is how everyone else was on set because they knew, and then so people would want to talk to me about like people they knew in their lives, or someone brought their girlfriend to set who had struggled, and they asked me if they could. I was like, absolutely. So I think for me, it was a surreal situation because I had kind of gotten past it from that point of view that you're talking about. And then when I brought it to festivals and when it was finally done and I was able to put it out there and speak to people about it, that's when things kind of came up in a really interesting way. Throughout the process, I never felt like triggered by it by any means.
All right.
But I've never really been triggered by things in that way. And it's funny because we would reach out to different groups and whatnot, and it was denied sometimes because they thought it would be triggering. And it just because my brain didn't work in that fashion.
Yeah, you were just, like I was saying, like when I was working on Getting Over, at some point you're just doing your job. It's content and all that. But if you, obviously there's going to be times where, you, especially as the director, and when I do narrative stuff, and I haven't done narrative in a while now, but when I used to do shorts, like when I work with an actor, I always want to be surprised. I think I heard Robert Altman say that once. I'm not surprised. If my actors don't surprise me, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
So like when I'm working with actors, I want to like pay attention to it in that way and kind of be in that. But yeah, on the other hand, you're still like, you're making sure your sound levels are fine. You're making sure your picture is fine. You're too busy working with Cooper, making sure he's got his focus. And you're just doing the job.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to put up, I don't even like using the term wall because that's like.
Well, I think it comes down to expectation. I feel like if I had put the expectation on myself that like I wanted this to be something for me, cathartically by any or whatever it was, or maybe even just sometimes with something, having that expectation of like you want your actors to surprise you. I think you end up missing out, I think expectations are just like the killers of everything on set. So unless my only expectation is I will make my day. That's the only thing that I do. But,
just want to have it in the can.
I didn't want to put that expectation on it by any means because it would just make it way too
the stakes
self-involved.
Are too high. Yeah, the stakes are too high.
It's too high, and it's like that's not what we're here for. We're here to make a movie. We're here to just like on the day. We're here to shoot the script. Like that, we're here to shoot what we've put out there. Like. It's not about me having some sort of like philosophical, revelation about stuff or having some sort of emotional catharsis. Like that's not what I'm there for on set. We keep it very professional, and it's like if that happens, I mean, great. But at the same time, I'd be concerned I'm taking too long and cutting into my day. So
right.
But yeah,
like all right, you guys have lunch. We're breaking for lunch. I'm just gonna go cry in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
and I will just somebody bring me a sandwich, and we'll be fine. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say that because the people, I honestly, because this is like my 4th episode that I'm recording and I hope that this goes, a long time. And I love talking to people and hearing their experiences. I think other filmmakers that'll listen to this will get that point of view, because we are all just trying to do the work and everybody's personal life informs their work, whether you're directing something that someone else wrote or something that you wrote yourself, like you bring to the table your life and your life experiences. So like that's just the natural order of things. But I don't think the general public, and I don't even like to say general public because it's like, oh, you're not in film, but we all watch movies. And I don't think people generally get that when we're on set, when we're shooting something, like there is a disconnect. We have X number of pages to get through, X number of setups to get through. And like, I gotta do that. I don't have time. I don't have time to like wallow in it. I'll wallow when the day's over and I get home, I'll wallow all night long, but when the day's going and I got people on set that are looking to you, for direction and for leadership, there's just no time for that. There's just ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, I feel like actually one of the, now that I think about it, this is how definitely messed with me the most, especially I think because I was acting in it when I got off set for that. Like I had to like kind of take a few. And then being on Mail Order Monster, like it was so funny. I think it's because just, the level of actors I was working with, and it was such a privilege too. Like there were times where Charisma and Josh would do a scene, or Charisma did a scene. Yeah, I think Charisma was doing a scene with Josh, and I cried. Like I found myself crying. Oh, and throughout the entire scene with Madison, like breaking everything in the shed.
Oh yeah, that was intense.
That's one take. Wow. That whole thing's one take, and I'm there with her, and we're both crying together. And it was like one of the most incredible things. And it's like whenever I think about it, it's like I'm right back there. It was just so cool because that was a time where I was very surprised, where great. That was a time where, I didn't like you're listening to something and you're in it and you're like, oh crap, I didn't realize I felt something about this scene. It was one of those where you're like, oh crap, I've been through this scene a million times through the script, but now that I'm hearing it like this and seeing it like this, that one did surprise me. But I think I was only able to be surprised because I had no expectation of being surprised.
Right. Were her parents on set when you guys were shooting that?
Yeah. Yes. They were the best people.
All right. So they weren't like, hey, you're fucking with my kid right now.
Not at all. We'd always ask Madison. We'd be like, how do you cry on She would come up with the craziest thing. She'd be like, I just pictured my dog getting stabbed. And I'm like, what? And we were all just like, let's not go into that kid's brain ever again.
Don't tell anybody your process. As long as we get there, we don't need it. Like the technique is yours.
I know. She has the best family though, and they're the best people. I was very, very lucky.
Outstanding. That's great. Well, let me ask. So let me, and then we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit. So tell me what you're working on right now. First of all.
Yeah.
Because you're not on Twitter, so I have no idea what the hell you're up to.
It's all a mystery. So after Mail Order Monster and after a few things, I then developed the producer boot camp, which is essentially, we've talked about, and I have a podcast for that I'm not consistent on at all, but I'm kind of like allowing the inconsistency to work in my favor, where I'm just like, hey, now I'm here again, with a guest or by myself. And that just essentially is everything that I wish I had when I was making my movie. Taking you from like script to release, little guides, and that was a big thing. And then I wrote another script with a co-writer, a feature, and we were initially going to make this script very different. We were initially making it to be a micro budget feature, and then based on just some like reactions we got, it's probably the most care I've put into any script. Based on some reactions we got, we've been able to kind of like get in front of a management company and now an agency, and we're going to try and go about it that route. I was also hired to write a feature, so I spent a lot of time writing.
That's great.
Finished that, so that's now on its way to do whatever it does. Hopefully it does something great, because then I'll have a nice check in the mail. If not, whatever, great learning experience.
Yeah, always, listen, checks are always good.
Paid as it was, and then recently hired and shot a short film on Super 16, which was probably the best production experience I've ever had. That was, I have to say, and I've been usually one of those, skeptics of like, oh, people get so up in arms about film, but you can make digital look like film and all this stuff, and sometimes
there's
it's not
just
worth
something
the
about
cost.
it. Listen, I'm an old fart. I learned how to cut on flatbeds, as I told you once before.
Yeah.
I haven't worked with film since, I was actually thinking about it after you told me, since 2001. I haven't actually had anything to do with film.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just something about loading the camera. And there's just something about, it's
everyone on set acts differently.
Yeah,
we shot on Super 16, which I have to say, like, compared to we did a lot of research beforehand as well. And we've always been interested, Cooper and I both were like, we put it out in the universe after Mail Order Monster. Like, we want to shoot something on 16, not 35, but 16 specifically.
Let's start with fewer sprockets.
We had so many different projects that almost happened with Super 16 and they fell through. And then this one happened and it just worked out beautifully. But being like with 35, and people may have their arguments with this, I truly think with 35, you almost cannot tell sometimes. Like if it's more, that is for me more about the process and the act, where with Super 16 specifically, it just does something that you just cannot, I think, replicate. When you look at the images.
I agree.
We got some stuff, and we didn't just have Super 16, of course, because it's me and I can't do anything easily, but it's like we've got Super 16 and then we're shooting like everything from sunset, dusk to twilight, all in one continuous scenes, all in the same day, and then we're doing Steadicam waters.
So Cooper actually loved, there was no friction on that set whatsoever.
Well, actually, I will say, we worked at our absolute best on that set. Leading up to it, he almost had, he lost sleep because
was he the loader as well? Did he load the camera?
No, so we had a full camera team, so he actually wasn't operating because we did so much Steadicam, and this is one of the first times I've worked with Cooper not as an operator. My first time as a director working with Steadicam, not as a producer. So I have to say we worked at our best on this because we finally had a full team again. That everyone on that team was at such a high level and was so good at what they do that Cooper and I always butt heads when we're wearing way too many hats, right? And the fact that he could just focus on shooting and I could just focus on directing, and that's what we had to do that day, everything was like the best.
Yeah, when you can delegate to a staff of people who know, who know what they're doing, and you know that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, we're not micromanagers. Yeah, we really are not micromanagers. We love to delegate, but we love to lead a team, and we've done every single job in the book and just been like a two-man band before and all the things. So we understand what goes into all of it. And it was just a beautiful experience. It's going to be difficult we've got like a roll of film in our fridge right now that was left over. And it's like going to be difficult not to shoot something again on 16. But it is an expensive process. I will say I'm very happy that I did not produce this or put money into this because
that's not micro budget anymore.
It is not cheap. No, it is not cheap. So it's like definitely a privilege when you can do it. I think it has to be, it was perfect for the project. Thankfully, it was something that was one of the reasons why I got hired, is because I suggested it for the project. And it's something that the EP was really interested in doing. And so it's not something that I would ever be like, oh, from now on, I'm only shooting Super 16, because that's just not feasible and it's not necessarily the right look. So it's just cool to work with another tool. We have our trusty Alexa that we love her very much, our classic. We will always use her, when we can. But it was a pretty phenomenal experience. And then since then, I've just been, in this cool situation where this other commercial production company, Fiction Pictures, asked me to kind of be a director on their roster for stuff. So they're really supportive and like trying to get me out there for things. And, I'm just got my head down and just working, like writing every day, and not even ever even putting expectation on my writing. Sometimes it's just like, okay, something may or may not ever happen with this script, but I'm writing it purely for the process of writing.
That's good.
And this will lead to something else, and submitting to different fellowships and stuff like that, not being afraid to do that, I think is really important, and to keep putting yourself out there. And that's really just what I've been focusing on. I feel a lot better now. Whether it's done anything huge for my career, I don't think so, like compared to what my Twitter days or whatever. But at the end of the day, like I feel more involved and active within my life and my creative career, whereas before I felt a little bit more helpless. even though the parameters haven't changed too much.
That's great. So do you feel actually, and then we'll kind of wrap it up on this. So do you feel like, so how much, so you're married now, and that's a whole, wonderful thing to have happen. Are you, and you feel like your career's, finally, like I said, it can come and go in waves.
Yeah.
But you feel like everything is going, have you and Cooper talked about any family planning? Like, what are your thoughts about all of that?
Oh,
or
yes,
is it like
we have
not
family
even
planning. Oh, no. We talk about all the things. Well, we've been working a lot. Like, I've been working bartending at a restaurant to save up as much money as possible. Cooper's thankfully been doing great with film and photography, where he hasn't had to do that right now. But
because it's another thing that I've always been interested in, with couples working together is you have to have, be on the same page with your work and financially and all that.
Well, we weren't at the beginning. We weren't at the beginning, and that was a problem. And then the beginning of this year, like I said before, I mean, we were dead broke coming out of New Year's, and Cooper started driving for Lyft, and I worked at a restaurant.
Yeah, I drove for Uber for a little bit.
Yeah, and he, did well with that. And then when we went on our honeymoon, the new law passed with California with all rideshare that kind of messed everything up.
Right.
And then thankfully, serendipitously, all of a sudden, all these film jobs are happening with him. He's bringing in more money with that. And like, I am working all the time at my restaurant, but also working in these other areas with my life. And so we've been able to save up enough money where we've got like almost $50K in the bank just of ourselves.
Wow.
Going from had $500 to my name at the beginning of the year. So the amount that we've saved is like astronomical. And we've worked really, really hard because we're looking to get our own place. That's like, for me, I'm wanting to do a duplex, like an investment property, because
that's a good idea.
I can't do like rent or, mortgage where I'm not getting like able to build equity or have some sort of cash flow over the long term. I'm obsessed with real estate. Well, you would know your wife's in real estate.
Well, so we can talk about that,
Yeah, exactly.
On another show.
I really got into learning about real estate. And so that's something that I'm like, just from a more of, not like I'm going to become a real estate agent or anything.
You just want to know, like, if you're going to look for a house, you want to know what's going on.
Exactly. So we've been looking to do that. I mean, we both definitely want to have kids and not wait too long with that either. So we're working really hard.
I guess that's what I was getting at, because you're busting ass and doing so well with everything right now, and
we're working hard.
I mean, sometimes it's not even up to you.
No, exactly. I'm thinking, I mean, for us, we definitely think like within the next 2 years, hopefully in the next year, we'd probably want to start having kids. I mean, I want to have like an army of us.
I mean, you got to put them to work. I know. You'll have actors, you'll have PAs.
I know. All the time, we're always like, man, if only there was a baby to be in the shot. Like, that's why we need to have kids, so we can have kids that like, free labor.
That's perfect.
So we have this great shot. I know. So
you don't have to deal with SAG or anything. It's just like, don't worry about it. Don't worry where the baby came from.
But just for now, it's one day at a time.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let me ask you one last question before I let you go. Are you happy with where you are in life right now?
Oh, the most. I'm very happy. I mean, Cooper.
You're right where you want to be?
Exactly. I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
That's great.
Right? So that's kind of what I had to let go of, is where I want to be and where I'm supposed to be are two very different things. And where I want to be is only going to, if I just focus on that, I get very depressed. I suffer with a little bit of depression too. And so, but that's always when I focused on like, I'm not where I want to be. And kind of the minute I've been able to surrender and just relax and breathe and know that appreciate gratitude and know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I get very happy.
That's great, because like I said, I don't hear, and it's got nothing to do with the film business either. Like whenever I talk to friends or whatever, like, oh, how are the wife and kids and how's this and that? Like, yeah, but like, are you happy? Like, exactly. It's really, and that's the reason, that's the real reason why I wanted to do this show, because I'm a work in progress, getting happy. Well, yeah, it's all, different days bring different moods, but so much of the conversation in what we do is art being pain, and like art needs to be, like, I mean, even it goes even as deep as the Scorsese Marvel thing, like there's no risk. Art needs to be, you need to slit your wrists and bleed onto the film, if it's going to be true art and all that. And I don't believe in it. No. I mean, to some extent, but not that extent.
Just the act of making a film is bleeding and painful.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's enough of it that just comes, with the process, that it's really important to me that the people I talk to, the people that I associate with, the people that I want to work with someday, even if you're not happy, as much as, a lot of comedies, but like Richard Lewis or whoever, like their comedy is built on like how sad they are,
right,
or Larry David or anything like that. Like it's funny to watch. but like, it's not the kind of life I want to live. I don't want to
Absolutely.
live, in this realm of negativity just so I can make a movie or tell stories or things like that. So it's really important to me to talk to filmmakers and creators and artists and just people in general when it's not for the show. I just want people to be happy, and I want people to be where they want to be in their lives, and if they're not, to just know that they're working towards that.
Jason, I love that. I think it's important for us to, like we said, kind of funny, it comes full circle, but you and I met on Twitter, the place where it's like everyone always posting about the end result of what they're doing.
Exactly.
And really, it's just, it all comes down to process and perspective and just surrendering to it all. I mean, this is such a great podcast. I love it. I think it's such a great purpose for it being out there. And I think, your outlook is great, and we all struggle with like maintaining that, but we don't have to keep that, positive outlook every single day. I think
listen, like I said, moods,
fluid.
Come and go.
Yeah.
But as long as we're all working, like that's why I feel like it's head above water. Like we're as filming, like we're juggling enough balls as it is that I think people tend to forget that it's really about, they're too focused on like, I need to have a sustainable career as a director, or I'm nothing. I need to do it this way, or it's not worth it, or I need to, it's just like, for me, it's just like,
no way to live a life.
I've already had a career in this business. Like if I don't direct another movie, I'd like to, but if I don't, it'll be okay. I've already done, I've had a good career, and I've worked with some great people, and I will continue to do so. Right now at this stage in my life, in my mid-40s, as I move on to the next phase, I want to be in a positive situation, and I want to do things that make me happy, and I don't want to,
absolutely.
and I don't think the art, I don't think the work needs to suffer for that. And I just want people out there to know that you don't need to suffer for that, and your happiness comes first and foremost beyond anything else.
I agree. I love it. I love it. It's such a great way to end it.
Awesome. Paulina, Lagudi, Ulrich, it was a pleasure speaking with you again. I will have to have you on again sometime to talk about, the producer boot camp and all of that stuff, and the podcast and your work with that. And tell Cooper he's got to show up next time, because I'm going to have a lot of questions for him. It's funny too, and I'll, I don't want to go too long because you got to get on with your day. But I find it funny when I do speak to couples. And it's the same in my household too. I find the woman is the one that's a little more forward facing.
Yeah.
Like the female directors are all about talking about it. And sometimes the guys, like, I mean, it's not like anyone's scared to talk, but it's
he's so self-conscious. That's why I'm just not self-conscious.
Well, listen, my voice is going to sound horrible on this. Whatever he sounds like, don't worry about it. Like, we're just shooting the shit here for an hour,
I know, I agree.
And whoever wants to listen to it, they're welcome to listen to it for this long. So, all right, Paulina, Lagudi, Ulrich, thank you again, and you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, until next time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You have a good one.
All right, you too.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye. And there you have it. Wow, that was a real great, real intense, fun, interesting conversation with Paulina. I'm glad you guys checked out the show. Glad to have you guys here. Again, please leave us a review or a rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. I'd love to hear from you as we move into the next phase of the show, as the episode count starts getting up. It's a bi-weekly show right now, but we're thinking about maybe going weekly as we continue to talk to more and more filmmakers. So yeah, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of the show. Thanks for sticking around, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. We will have Numa Perrier, writer and director of the movie Jezebel, which had its world premiere at South by Southwest this year. That was also a real fun conversation. Look forward to sharing that with you guys in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you guys then. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.